What's up, everybody? We are back for some Wednesday night Philly bets, talking everything on the Philadelphia betting market. I'm Dave Gleckner. This is Mark Drumheller, and we're proud to be here and happy because we're coming off a big victory on Tuesday night football edition of the NFL. Man, it's good. It's good, right? Go Birds.
Hey, it's nice to have them playoff vibes again, right? They got, meaningful games this time of year. We're coming down the stretch. We got some very favorable opponents, and the fact that, they're laying a huge number, 10-point favorites this weekend. And, the last two games are winnable too. They get Washington again, and then they get a Dallas team that might not have a ton of motivation to round out the season. So exciting times. I mean, they can really make this push. We talked about that in the beginning of the year. If they can get through the hard part of the schedule, they can make a run in the second half, and it's played out that way.
It really has. And last night was one of those games that I could say in years past, I really do feel like the Eagles would have struggled to, show their will, be the dominant team. And early on, they started to show that they were like the years past. But I guess the physicality, the ability to run the ball, and then take advantage of the middle of the field with some of their offensive threats like Goddard, I think just eventually took over. And I was proud to see them really win with no sweat. I know Washington got it to 3 at one point there, early fourth, but you didn't feel like they could really push hard against the Eagles. I was very impressed with the 10-point win, got a lot of gamblers' money. Some got the push, but I think they did a good job last night. I was really happy, especially with all the dynamics of moving the game and being off for, 14 days. So it was good.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is the way that they're built is positive and negatives, right? They're a power running team. That's their bread and butter. That's their identity, right? That's how they're going to beat you, and that's good because it gives you the ability to where if things start going the wrong way, you can really control the tempo of the game. You can reset a lot easier than if you're a high octane pass offense, right? Because that requires more rhythm. That requires more pieces in motion, right? This is settle down, hand the ball off, pound them, take control of the tempo, and reestablish, dominance in the game. And we saw that in the second half, right? Now that style of football, you can win like that in the playoffs, but it's also as you run into the elite teams, and they have the ability to shut that down, you have to be able to pivot. So, we saw Jalen Hurts make some big plays in the second half, looked much better than he did in the first half. And it was good to see him mentally overcome those challenges he had in the first half and deliver in the second half as well.
Absolutely. I was very impressed with his, I guess I'll say, accuracy. It's one thing I've been a little bit concerned about, and he really had one of his better throwing games. I think the running game, like you said earlier, they're a power team. It's 7 straight over 165 now. First time in franchise history, first team to do it in decades. It's been very impressive.
Yeah, it's a legit running game. Like this isn't like, hey, they played some weak teams and they're running the football. Like they were down many linemen and they still pounded this team 238 yards. I think, they're number 1 in the NFL, 163 yards on the year, averaging per game, 210 yards in the last 3 games. So last 3 games, they've averaged over 200 yards. Very reminiscent of the Ravens and how we saw them kind of ascend to the top ranks of the NFL, built the same way with Jalen Hurts, doing a lot of the same things. So it can win you some games in bad weather, and that kind of comes into play this time of year. So it's an exciting time, man. To see them do it without their top lineman, I think really speaks volumes.
It does. I was a little surprised, though, down near the goal line. And yes, Hurts got the ball, which was fine, but it was more Miles Sanders. I was a little surprised not seeing Jordan Howard. And then one of the plays early on where Jordan did fumble was on a pitch. That's not the way I think you really want to use Jordan Howard. I think it's just north-south. So I still think there's some feeling out here now that both are healthy. It's going to be interesting to me. I mean, Sanders brings you that great dynamic, that 1-2 cut, but Howard's that downhill force. I hope we see somewhere in the 50% share.
Yeah, and you don't want to, like, here's the thing too, right? Like, and I'm not saying you want to mess around when you're in the red zone in a game that you need to win, but you also have to show the defense different looks so they don't have keys. So they know when Jordan Howard comes in, it's not going to be a dive up the middle. It might be a pitch. When Miles Sanders comes in, maybe they throw it to him out of the backfield. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able, You see that with like Boston Scott. Like Boston Scott comes in and they know it's either going to hand it to him on a draw or it's going to be a screen, right? So I think they're trying to mix it up a little bit so these teams don't key on it, because it's really, they know they're going to run down there or they're going to go to Goddard. I mean, that's really the two options. So they have to try and show a little bit of diversity.
I hear you. So look, we're talking playoffs, and it's a beautiful time of the year. First NFL season where we really got to go through 18 weeks now too. So it throws a little, we're used to about wrapping this up after Christmas, but we actually go until the second weekend of January to play meaningful NFL games. So the Eagles have 3 left: Giants, football team, Cowboys. You like their chances in all 3? I think they'll be favored in all 3.
Yeah, I do. I think even if there is some motivation for Dallas as far as seeding in the playoffs, we've seen them struggle in Philadelphia in past years. In poor weather towards the end of the year, and I think that they have they should be able to run on this Dallas team. So I think that they'll definitely have a fighting chance. It's going to depend on Dallas's motivation, I think, of where that line sits. But you're seeing the market, I mean, very strong behind Philadelphia, laying 10 points to a team that they lost to just a month ago, I think is a big statement from the market here. I know that, Giants are down to their backup quarterback and, Glennon stinks, so they're trying Fromm in there and they don't really know what they're going to do. And they kind of mailed it in. They're just waiting to the end of the year so they can fire Gettleman. But they still lost to them, right? They played pretty poorly against that Giants defense. So this is a big number, for a team like Philadelphia to be laying. I don't think they've been this big of a favorite this year. And so it'll be definitely interesting to see how they respond.
I agree. Some of the key numbers this weekend, and the opening line has shown as the Eagles -10 at home this weekend to the New York Giants. Giants 4-10 overall, 6-8 to the line. So they have been absolutely terrible to the line, but they're not great either. One of the key things, they're 1-6 on the road. They can't see.
Yep.
They play some of the worst football on the road. Eagles haven't been that much better at home, as we know, but they're starting to win as they've won their last 2 at home. They're now 2-4 overall. It was interesting looking at the two teams where the Giants are 26th in the league in takeaways. They have 13. 4 were in that game against the Eagles. So I think that really speaks to how much of an aberration that was. This is not a team that creates turnovers. They had that one game, but outside of that, in their other 13 games, they've created 9. So I think as long as the Eagles protect the ball, I really do believe this is a number that they can cover and cover with ease. One thing we've known about the Eagles this year, they've blown out bad teams. When they win, they're not close to the number. They beat teams pretty good. And margin.
They win with margin, when they win, and especially when they beat up some bad teams. You can look at some of the numbers, right? And again, like the Eagles closed at 10 against Washington last week, but first time, this is kind of a new thing for them to be laying this big of a number. But you look at them, right? So the Eagles, as a favorite, right? Because big favorites in this game, we know earlier in the season they had some tough games. They were dogs before they kind of molded into who they are. As a favorite, 3-1-1 to the spread this year, the one obviously being last week against Washington. Margin of victory, though, 13.6 in those games. Margin of victory against the spread. So according to the spread, how much they win by? 8.6, which is second best in the NFL, only second to the New England Patriots. So you look at those numbers, and that makes you a little more comfortable laying this kind of a line of -10 against a Giants team that might have just mailed it in. Not really sure. And you want to look at how do the Giants perform in this role? How have they performed this year? And 1-4 this season against the spread when they were dogs of 7 or more than 7 points. So 7.5 or more, 1-4 against the spread. The only win being that road upset at New Orleans, where they won outright in that game. But besides that, they've just kind of laid down on these big numbers. So I think the Eagles can get it done here, even at double digits. I think that Giants don't really have a lot of offense to kind of keep pace with them if they are able to run the football. But it's going to be key. I think you talked about it. It's turnovers, because if they're turning the ball over, they're definitely not covering a 10-point number.
Yep. And I mean, the Giants overall are -8 in the turnover game this year. They've had 21 on the offensive side, which ranks 23rd. Even more importantly, they're 30th in scoring in the NFL, only averaging 17 points a game. So when you're looking at taking big numbers versus teams, you look at a team that can't score. There's value in this number for sure. Eliminate the turnovers, run the ball, which they did effectively the first game against the Giants. I think they doubled them in yards gained. And I think the Eagles have a really good chance. At this point, I think they're the play. The only thing that concerns me a little bit, and it's just a little, was the news today with Sirianni having COVID and a short week. But when you have an inferior opponent and you have that momentum for winning, I think it would have been harder if you lost last night, but you have that momentum. I still like them in this spot, and I think this number might hover and might stay around 10 just due to those two factors. What are your thoughts on those two factors?
Yeah, I agree, right? And it's kind of, people have different approaches, now this part of the season with all the COVID stuff going on. It's like, some people want to wait until kickoff, and I don't do that. I think that's, a tough idea. Listen, you're going to get beat out of a number sometimes. It's going to fluctuate, but we're not going to win every bet either, right? That stuff just kind of happens.
Yeah.
There's just variance in sports betting. There's variance in football. So I mean, I like to grab the numbers early in the week. If I were to play the Eagles here, I would just lay the 10 because I wouldn't be comfortable. You don't want to get in a spot of where like, hey, this thing gets the kickoff. It's like 12, and then you're laying a huge number, and I don't know. I would rather just get it here. The concern is that it doesn't end with Sirianni, right? Like, what happens if it's Hurts? What happens if it's more offensive linemen? What happens if it's the running backs? Then it's a different conversation, right? So there is some risk involved in taking a number like this early, but I also wouldn't want to lay more than 10 with the Eagles in this spot. So it depends on your approach.
Yep. No, I agree, and I play all that. I had one friend that I went to the game with last night. They had the game at 12, actually. I think he got it a line on Sunday, and unfortunately, they're in the fourth down range. Yeah, and they're in the fourth down range last night where they could have kicked the field goal with about 20 seconds left, but they decided to go for it, and that's what you get when you do get above that key number of 10. You get those situations like that, like you said, where the motivation isn't really a score near the end of the game. So I agree with you. I think 10's a good number. I stick with it. We'll see what happens this weekend. I'm excited. Now, the new COVID rules, I think, are going to allow some flexibility. Yes, if it touches some people and they're vaccinated, I think they're able to come back if they have no symptoms after 24 hours. So it's going to be, I think there's some chance.
Yeah. Hey, give them the old Scouts honor. No symptoms. Scouts honor.
They need to play these games. You know what the NFL's doing? They're like,
true. They're not giving up the money. Yeah, they're just throwing them out there.
Yeah, so I think they'll play, and I think most of the players will play. And gosh, if some of them are out, they better move this game. I'm just telling you, they better move it. They did it for Washington.
Well, I didn't like it. And here's the interesting dynamic, and I think they might have learned from it a little bit. I hope they did at least. But when you looked at those two games from Tuesday night, like it's almost like the health completely flipped in both of them, right? So like they moved it because Washington was decimated. They moved it because the Rams were decimated. And then when it came time to play the game on Tuesday, then the Eagles were decimated. Washington got their guys back. And then the Rams were decimated. And Seattle got decimated. And the Rams got Jalen Ramsey back, Beckham back, all those guys. So it kind of like flips the balance. Like, you know what I mean? And so it's a little bit tough, I think, to do that, to move it. I would just, either play the game or don't play the game. But when you start moving it around, you really start impacting the competitive balance, I think.
You do. And it is, the Eagles are at a disadvantage for having to play with only 4 days rest. But hey, we digress. We got the one out of the way. It's going to be some fun football the day after Christmas and going in here into the new year. So,
what do you think about the total? What do you think about the total real quick? Yeah, okay.
Under. So my big feeling there, the Giants played almost every game the under, and I get it. It eventually one of them has to break, but I have seen nothing out of Mike Glennon that tells me that we're going to sit here and put up more than 16, 17. I think you need the Giants to put up somewhere in the teens for this over to hit. It is what, 42?
40 and a half. So it's down to 40 and a half. The Eagles are 8-6 to the over, and the average closing line is 47.4, right? So it's very atypical. Now, again, last week against Washington, low number, 39.5 went over. But that's kind of like the new norm. Like they were pretty much had some high totals coming into that. Giants, average closing line total 45.5 this year, so a little bit lower, but 4-9-1 to the over. So they've been an under team, as you mentioned it, under in 7 of the last 8 games. So it's just been, they kind of mailed it in. And, now once Daniel Jones is out, they can't score, they can't put up points. But it's a low number for the Eagles, man. Like the Eagles, in their games, they typically score. They run, and if this team can't stop the run, they're going to keep running it down their throat. Like, think about all the missed opportunities the Eagles had in that game against Washington, and they still put up 27.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I just need the Giants to take over with confidence. I need confidence that they could put up 14, 13. Eagles put up 28.
It could easily be like it could easily be 21-10 game, something like that, where it goes way under.
Yep. And the first game kind of gives you pause.
Yeah, and and especially Eagles coming off, short rest. Are they going to be a little gassed? Are they going to just try and get out of there? Once they get the lead, just kind of sit on it, rest up, and get out of there.
Cool. Yeah. All right. I wanted to just pick your brain for one quick thing. The sports world right now is upside down. NHL canceling games for 3 days. What do you think that does to, I don't understand how that even really benefits teams to get healthier. 3 days of canceling games to just hit a pause button and come back. Do you think that benefit? And 2, do you think it's coming in other leagues?
I think it is. I mean, I think that, the NFL, everybody's gearing up now and everybody knows that it's a reality. You've seen the NFL come out and, they're obviously changing the way that they do things. Word leaked out today. They almost canceled all these games. The Eagles game, the Cleveland game, there were 3 games. They almost shut them down and paused ourselves, right? So, you look at the other leagues, the NBA canceled, what is it, the Nets and the Trailblazers, right? They're starting to cancel games. So you're kind of seeing it, and college football comes out and it's like, hey, if you can't play, you forfeit the playoffs. We don't care. We don't want to hear your excuses. So it's kind of nuts. Like, people are like, I can't imagine they're going to flush that network money down the drain and have that game be a forfeit. But you can tell that they believe that it's a reality, or they wouldn't have a contingency plan in place.
No, and now with the bowl game coming out today, the Texas A&M is just like, we're out.
They can't
give up their status against Wake Forest in the Gator Bowl. There's just a lot in the betting world. It's really impactful when you take these games early. My only advice right now is, unless you love a line, it would be to wait and get closer to game time. I know you might lose some value. You may even have to not bet it. But there's just too much variance, because I did it one game and the line moved by 3 or 4 points. And I went back in to try and pull it back. Books aren't letting you pull back.
No, they're not going to let you cash out on that, dude. They're going to take you. Yeah. And it's both ways. It's, you have to kind of stay on top of it, right? So we see the situation with the Hurricanes, right? So now they're, the Miami Hurricanes, college football, right? They have an outbreak, right? So you've seen that line move 2 points. Went from Miami -2.5. Now you're seeing pick 'em in some spots. You're seeing -1 with Washington State. So if you can get ahead of it, I think you can get value. But you have to be on the news. You have to catch these things right away, because the markets are quick to adjust.
Yeah, and the books aren't.
It's the age of information, man. Yeah, it's the age of information. So
it really
you got to be on it. But you can look at it Texas A&M, for instance, that game that you mentioned, opened at -7. And then, the information comes out with the quarterback. He's not going to play. He's not, he's hitting the portal or whatnot. I forget what's going on. Transferring. Yeah. So, then it drops to 5, and then you see it drop to 3 when you hear they have a COVID problem, and now the game's canceled. So a lot of movement, a lot of line movement. And if you can stay ahead of the news, you might be able to get some value, but it just, again, it depends on your approach. You can wait till kickoff and you can bet that line, but that's after, 500,000 of the best sports bettors in the world already bet into it. So there's not going to be a huge edge there, by that point anyway. So, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, which is, it's a hard time for sports bettors right now.
It really is. It really is. But hey,
but we survived. We survived last year.
Yeah. No, we
still
will.
made money last year. Yep.
There's going to be value. We're going to find spots, and we're going to be able to hit where we can. It's just one of those stories for me right now is just tread carefully, and that would be my only advice to a lot of people that are trying to pick the right spots, because this is just so volatile right now. And like you said, the world of information, you're probably not going to be ahead of the sports books. You think you might see something be ahead, and they're already 2 steps ahead. So, hey, man, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, you and your family.
Definitely. You too, brother.
We'll be back Absolutely. At it again. We'll be back at it again right after the new year, hopefully talking Eagles victory and looking forward to the game against the Washington football team, and we'll break down their chances of making the playoffs. Vikings, big game this weekend. They have the Rams coming to town. We could see a flip in the 7-8 spot, and the Eagles, after this weekend, could be sitting in that last wild card, which would be pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, bud.
It'd be nice to squeeze out Minnesota.
I know.
All right, you got it. Fly, Eagles, fly, baby.
All right. We'll talk next week. Until then, we are Philly Bets. Heat Ratio Sports, we're out.